In answer to Rama's question concerning pure being, Vasishta said, actually it's not very clear which question this is. Rama's not actually asked the question for quite a long time, and the last one was way back in chapter 50 about restraining this wheel of cosmic illusion. But it doesn't really matter. When the mind has ceased to be because of the total absence of the notions of material existence, consciousness exists in its own nature as consciousness, and that is known as pure being. This is basically acknowledgement of our own awareness, being aware of our own awareness, instead of being caught up with the contents of awareness, or notions of the content of awareness. When consciousness, devoid of notions of objectivity, merges in itself, losing its separate identity, as it were, it is pure being. When all external, material, and internal, notional objects merge in consciousness, there is pure being of consciousness. They don't actually merge. I suppose you just realize their non-difference. This is the supreme vision which happens to all liberated ones, whether they seem to have a body or they are without one. Again, this is the traditional yogic distinction between being liberated while living or being liberated after you've moved on from the body. But the point is, if you're established in this consciousness, or if you're established in consciousness, you realize that the body is notional anyway. The body is another notion. So this distinction is irrelevant. This vision is available to one who has been awakened, to one who is in a state of deep contemplation, and to a man of self-knowledge. It is not experienced by the ignorant person. Sages and the members of the Trinity are established in this consciousness, O Ram. Having reached this state of consciousness, Uddalaka lived for some time. Uddalaka, after having reached this consciousness, he purified it. He purified his latent tendencies, and he used various yogic practices to do this. In course of time, in his mind there arose the wish, let me drop this embodiment. He went to a mountain cave and seated himself in the lotus posture with his eyes half closed. He closed off the 9 apertures of the body by pressing his heel against the rectum, etc. He withdrew the senses into his heart. He restrained his life force, prana. He held his body in a state of perfect equilibrium. He pressed the tip of his tongue against the root of his palate. His jaws were slightly parted from each other. His inner vision was directed neither inward nor outward, neither above nor below, neither in substantiality nor void. He was established in pure consciousness, and he experienced pure bliss within himself. He had reached the consciousness of pure being, beyond the state of bliss. His whole being had become absolutely pure. So Uddalaka seems to be one of these yogis who can decide on the time of his own death. Uddalaka remained in this totally pure state for some time, like a painted picture. Gradually, day by day, he attained perfect quiescence. He remained in his own pure being. He had risen above the cycle of birth and death. All the doubts were set at rest. Perverse thoughts had ceased. All impurities of the heart had been washed away. He had attained that state of bliss which is beyond description, in which one regards even the joy of the King of Heaven as worthless. Thus his body remained for a period of 6 months. The question arises whether he was experiencing even a yet further enhancement of his own enlightenment. And I think we have to say no, because the descriptions of his previous realization are just as profound and just as marvelous. So it's just being described again here in preparation for his moving on. After that, one day, several goddesses led by Parvati arrived at that spot in response to the prayers of a devotee. That goddess, worshipped by the gods themselves, saw the body of Uddalaka, which had been dried by the scorching rays of the sun, and quickly placed it on the crown of her head. Such is the glorious story of the sage Uddalaka, O Rama, which awakens the highest wisdom in the heart of one who takes shelter in its shade. So Uddalaka ended up as a headdress for the goddess Parvati. Vasistha continued, O Ram, living like this, constantly inquiring into the nature of the self, attain peace. This state of consciousness can be attained by the cultivation of dispassion, the study of scriptures, the instructions of a guru, and by the persistent practice of inquiry. But if the awakened intelligence is keen and sharp, you will attain it even without the other aids. And I'd just like to stress the point here that the yoga that Uddalaka practiced was not necessary for self-inquiry. You don't need to know about pranayama or kundalini yoga. And this point is stressed now and again in the Yoga Vasistha and by others like Ramana Maharishi. The persistent practice of self-inquiry. It sounds dogmatic to say so, but there's not any other way to spiritual realization. Self-inquiry is about turning the awareness on itself, turning the attention on itself. That's what it's about. Anything else is about pursuing notions.